Hey everybody, Omar here, the Knife Shark Guy, and I am back with another Kershaw classic. And today we're going to be taking a look at two new knives. These are the final two in my Kershaw discontinued collection. It has been a lot of fun going over these knives and remembering what they were all like. For my final video on the Kershaw discontinued knives, I'm going to pull out all of my Kershaw discontinueds and go over them very quickly, just naming them, the model number, who designed them, so on and so forth. But for right now, let's go ahead and go back to a very special year. So the two knives you see in front of you were actually released in 1998. They were designed by Ken Onion. I don't know, maybe some of you guys weren't even born in 1998, but that's when these two knives were actually released. And both these knives were actually the two knives that actually kicked off Ken Onion's career with Kershaw back in 1998. That was also the year that Kershaw turned 25 years old. And so both these knives are actually 25th anniversary edition knives. And as you can see on the back of the box, I'm kind of sorry you can't see it because I can't see it either, but underneath the sticker here, it says, you see the little part of an A on there. I don't know why they put the sticker over that, but there it is. There's an A covering 25th anniversary on there, on both the boxes, as you can see. So let's go ahead and move these two boxes out of the way. I just wanted you to see what the boxes look like. And let's focus in on the two pieces that we're talking about today. So what you see in front of you, this knife here is the Kershaw Ricochet. Not very many of these were released. I don't really remember how many, but it was not they were produced in very limited quantity. There were not a lot of them produced. This knife was, again, a very special 25th anniversary piece. Ken Onion had designed the knife. They were looking for a knife maker that would kick off Kershaw's folder line, and they decided to approach Ken Onion, who had quite a small following in 1998, and they had asked him to produce a knife for them, and basically if they liked his work, he would get the job as their premier knife designer. And as you can see, years later with this knife, this is the knife that got him the job. So this is the Kershaw Ricochet. It's a serrated version. The knife is mostly known as only a collector's piece now. So let's go over it really quickly, and I will go over this knife in a second. I'll go over that in a minute. So if we take a look at it, this knife is basically, it's a liner lock. The lockup on this is right around 50%. It is a spring-assisted knife that opens with a thumb stud. As you can see, the thumb studs are very old-fashioned, nothing fancy. They're just more like cylinders, round cylinders, because at the time, you know, Kershaw had not produced anything that was considered as sporty or classy as some of the things that we see today. So this is Kershaw at its primitive form during the good old days when they were just getting started with the popularity of folding knives, trying to attract a younger crowd. I believe this is right around the time that maybe slip joints were starting to go away, and they were looking for new ways, new forms of knives that they were trying to get into, and they hit upon Ken Onion, and he came up with this baby. So the knife itself, the steel on it is CPM 440V, which a lot of you guys know eventually became a 60V, which is now also gone. The model number on this knife is 1520 ST for serrated. It does have a pocket clip, tip up only, right side, left side only. At the time, as you can see, you can't really flip the pocket clip over. This is the only place you can actually have the pocket clip on there. But as you can see, it's a very old, classic looking knife. There's nothing particularly cool about it other than the fact that it's a collector's piece. The scales on it are polished, either polished G10 or micarta. I believe it is micarta on there. Very polished. It's not really as good for gripping. As you can see, there is jimping on the knife, but look how far down it is, and it's actually below flush, so you don't really get any traction on it. So that's what made it kind of interesting. People, I'm assuming during this time they did not have, all of the popularity of folding knives hadn't not really come in yet. This was probably one of the very first folding knives that became somewhat popular. And again, as I said before, it is a collector's piece. So there's really not much to talk about with this piece, other than, again, it is a collector's discontinued model, and it is a knife that kicked off Ken Onion's career with Kershaw. Yeah, there really isn't a lot. I think probably one of the coolest things I like about the knife is that the pocket clip is blackwashed. I don't know how functional it is. I never did use the pocket clip, but I can imagine if you used it, it would probably scratch up the micarta on there. So, anyhow, there you have it. The Kershaw Ricochet, released in 1998 to commemorate Kershaw's 25th anniversary. So there's one of the discontinued, one of the two last discontinued knives that I actually have in my collection, and the other one is the Kershaw Avalanche, which, as you can see, looks fairly similar to the Ricochet, except for the fact that the Ricochet is serrated. This is not serrated. It's a spring assist. Now, this knife, as you can see, has G10 on it. It's a very rough, coarse G10, unlike the polished G10 on the, or micarta, on the 1998 anniversary edition Ricochet piece. This knife you could actually use, and I can see people actually using this knife. Now, what's interesting about this knife is, this knife is also incredibly collectible. This is the very first version of the knife. They actually released it, I believe, at least twice. This is the first version of it. The second version of it was basically more modern G10, not this coarse G10 that you see here. So this one is even more rarer than the one that was released after this. Reason being is that this is CPM 440V, and the blade is uncoated, meaning there's no, if you look at the knife, this knife has got some sort of a sheen on it. This is an uncoated version of the knife. CPM 440V. It's uncoated. This sucker is incredibly sharp. Both of these guys are incredibly sharp. But the fact that, for some reason, the uncoated version is the one that everybody is after, and I was lucky enough to pick this up at a Goodwill store. And I actually bought it with the box and everything. Right here, you're going to hate me for this, but I picked it up with the box. It was sitting there on the table, and this is at a time when I wasn't really sure what I was collecting. I didn't know much about knives back then. I didn't know anything about spring-assisted blades or ball bearings or anything. I was just basically a knowledgeless person that liked knives, and I picked this knife up at a Goodwill store for roughly, I believe it was $3.24 was the little label that was on the box. $3.24 I picked it up, and lo and behold, I looked around on eBay and I found out it was a collectible piece, and the fact that it was an uncoated piece, uncoated version of the knife, that basically just made me decide to continue collecting the Kershaw discontinueds, and that's where I find myself today. So very similar to the Kershaw Ricochet, it is a spring-assisted knife. Fairly decent action on there. The torsion bar on both of these are fairly a little weak, because it's almost as if though the spring-assisted concept was still in its like experimental stage, and they didn't really, because you can definitely feel it doesn't feel, even though you can see it snaps out, it doesn't feel quite as strong of a torsion bar as the other spring-assisted knives that I've experienced from Kershaw. So this is the very beginning stages of their knife making, because at the time I don't think they even had really an audience for knives like this. So the similarities between both knives are basically the same. They're both spring-assisted knives. They both have CPM 440V steel. They're both very rare, and they're both 25th anniversary edition pieces. Other than that, there really isn't anything more to talk about. It's just a quick walk down memory lane. If anybody else out there owns these knives or has these knives, I would suggest that you pretty much keep them, because they are true collector's pieces. Like I said, to find the uncoated version of the Avalanche is super rare. They didn't release very many of these. So that alone makes it very collectible. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the blade, you can tell there's no shine on it. It's just basically an uncoated piece. So there you have it, the Kershaw Avalanche and the Kershaw Ricochet. Hope this has been a fun walk down memory lane for you guys. If you've ever seen it or if you come across this knife, at least you'll know what it is. I would definitely consider picking it up if you were as lucky as I was to see it at a Goodwill store. Grab that sucker. This knife goes for, on eBay, right around $300 to right around $279 to $300. The same goes for this thing, only because the blade is uncoated. There's no protection on the blade there. That's what makes it actually collectible, is that. Like I said, they did release a second version of this knife with the blade coated, like you see here, and the sheen, where it's got that sheen on it. So if you see this, definitely get it. They did not produce very many of these either. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this quick video on my final two Kershaw discontinued knives. It's been a lot of fun. As I said before, for my final video, I'm going to pull out all of my Kershaw discontinueds. I'm going to have that for you next week. I'm just going to go over the model numbers and the names and the designers who made them. And I don't know, what can I say? I'm going to continue to collect these Kershaw discontinueds. And I was at one time considering possibly selling them all off, but I've decided since then not to do that, because these knives, these Kershaw discontinued knives, they pretty much define me as a collector. I have other knives, that I actually use that are more modern, obviously, ZT 0609 and the brand new Zero Tolerance 393 that I've been carrying so much and I love a hell of a lot. Since I didn't do any size comparisons, I thought I might as well bring those out so you can clearly see size comparison on that. I think probably the reason I didn't do a size comparison on them is because they're collectible. They're not really knives anybody's going to be sought after to go and get unless you're a collector. I don't see anybody actually using these. So anyway, there you have it. This is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, once again with the Kershaw Ricochet 1520 serrated, ST serrated version, and the Kershaw 1570 Avalanche uncoated version, very rare. So this is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, once again signing off. And again, if you like what you see, please click on like and subscribe, and please do leave your comments. I appreciate the one guy that left a comment last week. I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. Like I said, I am at a bit of a handicap. I don't have the time constraints to work on my site, but hopefully at least I've gained a few followers that can understand the situation that I'm in. You start YouTube channels, you don't really have time to commit to getting them the way you want to, but hopefully someday I will dress up the site, have more things on it. In the meantime, I do have a few followers, and I hope you guys stick with me as I go through the rest of my collecting. And again, please leave your comments and subscribe. And this is Omar, the Knife Shark Guy, hoping you'll find happiness in your next piece of sharp art. These are very, very cool to own, and I'm very happy to have them. Have a good night, guys. Until next time, Omar, the Knife Shark Guy. See you later.